What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to continue with our coverage of each division in preparation for the 2025 fantasy football season. We are going to be doing the AFC West teams today. So finishing up the AFC, and then later this week we'll get into the NFC divisions as well. So in this video, what I'm going to do, just like my previous videos in the AFC that you can check out from the past week, we're going to talk quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and then a little bit on defense and kicker as well, where I see great value and where you may see some bust potential given each player's ADP. So if you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. I reply to all my commenters, so if you have any questions about your fantasy football team or any questions in general, just ask in the comment section below. And please subscribe if you're interested in more content beyond fantasy football. We've got some other content as well that you can check out in the description below. We will be starting with the Denver Broncos in this video. And as a precursor, there's a lot of value in this AFC West division, especially among rookie running backs. That is a theme in this division that I will get to in a little bit. But there's also some great flex value that I will talk about accordingly in this division. So back to the Denver Broncos. You can check out my video that I made on Sunday this past week in which I talk the quarterback rankings. And Bo Nix is one of the quarterbacks that is going a lot higher this year relative to where he did last year, one of the breakouts in his rookie season. And I like Bo Nix as well. I talk a little bit more about him in that video and how I rank him compared to the other quarterbacks. But I think Bo Nix is great value for this season. He really came on strong late in the season this past year, and he has another year under his belt of NFL experience. So I do think Bo Nix is a top 10 quarterback, and I think there is potential that he could be higher than that. There is a little bit of risk of maybe he won't finish as high, but I think relative to the ADP of where you're getting him and how I think he's going to continue to grow in Sean Payton's offense, I think that Bo Nix is going to be an excellent pick for fantasy this year. However, this backup quarterback room is probably one of the most concerning to me in the league. He's got Jarrett Stidham as his backup, longtime Sean Payton holdout, and then Sam Ehlinger, who's bounced around a little bit now. If anything were to happen to Bo Nix, I think this really spells trouble for this team because they have one of the weaker backup quarterback rooms in the league, in my opinion. So hopefully nothing happens to Bo Nix, but just something to monitor because this would really tank the value of some of these players if something were to happen to Bo. All right, now for the running backs. So this running back room is led right now on the depth chart by RJ Harvey. I was a little surprised to see that on ESPN that they have RJ Harvey projected as the starter. I would have thought that J.K. Dobbins would be the starter because of, usually in these situations they give the veteran the RB1 position right out of the gate heading into training camp. But they're giving it to RJ Harvey, and they took him highly in the second round, which was generally higher than a lot of people had him projected. He's an older running back and a little bit smaller at 5'8", but he was very productive in his career and especially his final year at UCF. So there's a lot of argument to be made that RJ Harvey is NFL ready and he can step up right away and take over this backfield. So as a result, he is going a little bit higher, up there in the range with some of the other rookie running backs in this division. But I'm a little more concerned about Harvey in terms of just how much volume he's going to get on this team. You have J.K. Dobbins, who was very productive with the Chargers this past year, and I think that he's brought in for a reason to help split the carries, especially in those early down situations. You also have Audric Estime, who is also a pretty good short yardage running back, and then Jaleel McLaughlin was effective as a change of pace guy too. So, and we saw this last year with the Broncos, as there was a running back by committee that also included, I believe his name is Travis Bidet. I can't quite remember his first name. But they mixed in Javonte Williams as well and some other guys. So I do feel that this is going to trend towards an RB committee early on. But I think if you're going to go with any of these guys off the upside, I would go with RJ Harvey. I'm just going to double check his draft position currently. I believe it's generally around the 9th and 10th round, which is not bad value to take a chance if you're looking for a backup running back in Harvey. I think he's going Oh, he's going all the way up in the 6th round now. So he's definitely shooting up the draft boards relative to where he has last week. So I don't know if I would take him as high as 6 personally. I think he's a great flyer as a running back that you could take if you have a good running back room already. But I don't know if I like him all the way up in the 6th round. He's more of an 8th round type of value guy that I like. There's I really do feel that J.K. Dobbins is going to have quite a role, and you could get him in the 13th round. And I think that especially early on, Dobbins is going to be getting a lot of carries in this backfield. But Harvey's got a lot of upside, and I think that it's definitely worth taking a chance. But you're going to cost yourself pretty high capital by going up and getting him. I would probably trend towards not doing that. And then Estime and McLaughlin are really only of interest in the event of injuries right now, but they are viable handcuffs should anything happen to Harvey and Dobbins. Now we move to the wide receiver room, and Courtland Sutton was one of the more underrated wide receivers last season. He was flirting around the top 10 last season, and especially when you take out the early season struggles, Courtland Sutton was very effective. So you look at this wide receiver room again, and it's pretty clearly Courtland Sutton's wide receiver room to lose. He's going to get a large majority of the target share, in my opinion, and I think it's just going to continue to trend that way as Bo Nix's favorite target. The other thing I like about Courtland Sutton is that he's generally going much later in drafts relative to a guy that is pretty clearly the wide receiver 1 on this team. Just searching right now for what his relative ADP is, and it's generally in the 5th round. I think that's pretty good value for him, especially. You could get somebody that's going to get wide receiver 1 target volume, and I would probably prefer him over those guys that are on the fringe of a wide receiver 2. So you're looking at, in the similar range of him, you have guys like DJ Moore, who should be the wide receiver 1, but there's so many mouths to feed in Chicago. I'm a little bit worried there. You have Devonta Smith around that range as well. To me, Devonta Smith, although he shows upside, is pretty clearly the number 2 behind A.J. Brown. So I would prefer to go with Courtland Sutton among the guys that are going in that same round as him. I think that is great value that you can get at that position in the draft. And real quick, I'm just going to take a look at what Courtland Sutton's ranking was last season. He was the number 10 wide receiver last year, and that was even with a pretty slow start from Bo Nix in September. So Courtland Sutton, to me, this is great value that you're getting in the 5th round. Going to be one of the guys that I will probably be targeting late in fantasy drafts. So what to make of these other wide receivers? They're generally returning a lot of the same guys from the previous season. They have Marvin Mims coming back, Devon Villay, and Troy Franklin are the key guys. So all of these players kind of had up and down points at different times in the season. I would say in general that of them, I would prefer Devon Villay. Villay really showed some promise at certain times this season, or this past season. But the thing with him is that he would have a good stretch of games from time to time, and then it would kind of fall off. But I think he showed the most consistency of these 3 receivers and rapport with Bo Nix. So I would prefer to go with Devon Villay if you're looking at just the comparison between Mims and Franklin. But Troy Franklin, again, played college with Bo Nix, so that's another thing to consider as well when you're looking at the secondary wide receivers. But all of them generally in single quarterback leagues, 10 to 12 team leagues, are going undrafted. I don't think that they're really great value, but one of them is going to step up as the wide receiver 2. I think there's a good chance it could be kind of a rotating door between all these receivers of who's going to really be the secondary option. But of all of them, I like Devon Villay the most based on what we saw this past season and his continued development in the NFL as a second-year wide receiver going into this season. Big addition that this team made at the tight end position is Evan Ingram, who comes over from Jacksonville. And Evan Ingram, he's not an elite tight end or anything, but he is effective. And I think there's a real argument to be made that he could be the second wide receiver option on this team. Evan Ingram as well is going pretty late in drafts. He's going around the 10th round. And if he gets close to the volume that he got with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, I think there's a real chance that he could be a very effective tight end this season. I will be doing my tight end rankings for all the tight ends in the NFL, just like I did with quarterbacks. That'll be coming out this upcoming weekend, so take a look out for that. But Evan Ingram is going to be somebody that I will probably be targeting among the tight ends that were going in that late round range, around the 10th round. There are a couple different options that you can go, which I'll get to a little bit more in that video, but I think Evan Ingram is one of the better ones that you can go with of the guys there. Adam Troutman coming back again. He had some good production from time to time, but I think now he is clearly the second tight end. Not going to have too much of a role. And then Lucas Kroll, kind of the same thing, but to an even lesser degree from this past season. I don't usually talk defenses, but I really do think that this Denver Broncos defense is clearly my defense number one on the season. So already this past season, Denver's defense was elite. They were a top 5 defense last season, and now they get even more weapons onto this team that they didn't have before. So they added Talanoa Hufanga, who before his ACL injury was a beast at safety. They're also bringing over Dre Greenlaw, again from the 49ers. Benito is a year older. They, Riley Moss, again, a year older and more experienced. Pat Surtain anchoring that defense at the cornerback position. I mean, this defense is incredible in my opinion, and I think they just got even better in the offseason in addition to what they already had going last year. So I think this is one of those defenses that if you are going to reach, I think this is a defense that may be worth it to reach for. The other teams that come to mind are the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Philadelphia Eagles as defenses that I really like for this upcoming season. So pay attention to those, and I will probably do defense and kicker next after that. I want to save running back and wide receiver for the end because there's just so much of it that I think those will be longer videos that will help you a little bit closer to draft day. But I'm telling you, this Broncos defense right now is my defense one, and one of the ones that I would definitely be trying to target in your redraft leagues. Will Lutz is the kicker. So, the Denver kickers are always nice because of the altitude. They can get a little bit further air on the ball up there than most places. You can get those long kicks that give you a lot of points. And Will Lutz is one of those guys that you could probably get pretty late or undrafted as well. So, again, another kicker that I like as well on this Denver Broncos team. All right, so spent a lot of time on Denver. We are now going to go to the Kansas City Chiefs, in which I will probably not spend as much time on because I do not like Kansas City for fantasy. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And I kind of went into this with my Patrick Mahomes rant in my last video. But this Chiefs offense is just not the same as it was back in the prime offense days, for back of letter words, of Patrick Mahomes when he had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in his prime. This offense is very much a grind it out, do what you need to do to win. It's not going to be pretty for fantasy. And considering they're returning almost all the same players from last season, and they've been so effective with this elite defense over the past 3 years that they've went to the Super Bowl, I really do not see that changing at all. And if anything, I think that they may be a little bit worse this next season due to regression from just how many games that they won by a thread last year. So I'll start with Patrick Mahomes. If you want to see more in depth of why I do not like him and his value, especially the fact that he's going in the 5th or 6th round in a lot of leagues, and I'm telling you, there's going to be leagues where people take him even higher. There are going to be people that draft him in the 1st round that don't know anything about fantasy football, and I'm telling you that's going to happen. There's going to be people that do that, and it's just terrible. But this guy is a trap waiting to happen for fantasy. I just really don't see his numbers changing. Yes, he does have elite upside from what he had a few years ago, but until this team really gets some elite wide receivers in there, I do not see anything changing with the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes is a straight avoid for me. Gardner Minshew is now the backup with Kansas City. I'm really interested to see how that would go should he actually play. Bailey Zappi on the Chiefs as well. Surprised he got another gig in the league, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully for the Chiefs' sake, they don't have to go to the backups at all. They can just keep rolling with Pat. Because as much as I dog him on fantasy, he is an elite quarterback. And he figures out a way to win games. But I just have a feeling it's just going to be ugly again this season. Not great for fantasy. The running back room is even worse, in my opinion. Isaiah Pacheco is currently the highest drafted running back per his ADP right now. And this is another guy that I'm avoiding because Pacheco did not look great after his injury last season. And, maybe he can get healthy, but Kareem Hunt was very effective last year when he got signed and brought back in. Elijah Mitchell dealt with injuries and didn't play last season, but he's also a good running back. It's just, to me, and they also drafted a rookie onto this team as well that will eat it away at some of the minutes as well. I'm going to double check what his name is. But I'm not a big fan of, especially Isaiah Pacheco going 7th round. To me, that is just not worth it at all. I think this is a team that I'm going to be avoiding all these running backs. I think if you are going to take a chance, I would really consider Kareem Hunt, who's generally going undrafted in a lot of leagues, and I think there's a real chance that he could actually be the starter. And this is the rookies is Brashard Smith, excuse me. He was drafted in the late rounds from SMU. I think there's a chance that maybe he can get involved a little bit, but just I don't really have much interest in him for fantasy purposes. This is, again, going to be another running back by committee, in my opinion, and a bit of a mess. The wide receiver is a little bit different, though. Rashee Rice was great for fantasy last season, and I think he's dropping in in drafts. He's generally going in the early 5th round. I think that's a little bit high for where I would like to take him, but if he got the majority of the volume when he was healthy last season, and I think that will generally continue to be the case. I think it's going to be between him, Kelsey, and Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy I like to potentially take a step forward, and he's going a little bit later, generally in the 6th round. I would really like for both of these guys, if they were both going a round or 2 later, I would probably be more interested in them, because I think what's going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of up and down performances from these guys. They will be great in certain games, but in other games they're going to be very frustrating and tank your week. I would generally personally be trying to avoid the Chiefs because it's very much the same situation as the New England Patriots from a few years ago, where they spread the ball around, they do what they need to win. It doesn't look great for fantasy, but it's effective and it wins them games. Juju is back, and I'm not going to be looking his way at all for fantasy football. Jalen Royals is an interesting rookie that they drafted who fell a little bit in the draft process as well. And I think there's a chance he could step up into a higher role on this team, but I really don't see that with the guys ahead of him. I still think they're going to incorporate Juju as well as Hollywood Brown. And Hollywood Brown is another one that, he's going late in drafts if he is getting drafted at all. I'm personally not very interested in him because I've just seen how up and down he's been throughout his career in fantasy, and I would, especially now with this Chiefs team where given the situation I just described, I would prefer not to take a chance with him. And then Sky Moore back again, another guy I'm just not interested in at all. Travis Kelce. So what do you do with him? He is going pretty high this year in drafts, but he has fallen off quite a bit from his previous years of being a 2nd, 3rd round, even a 1st round pick. Now he's going in the 8th round. And I think that's honestly like pretty good value for Kelce. He's going around the same range as TJ Hawkinson, and I prefer Kelce over Hawkinson personally. So the thing with Kelce is that you're going to get some great games, especially in those marquee matchups. They're going to be relying on his volume heavily, but I would personally expect that there's going to be a lot of volatility with Kelce, and if you do roster him, I would not be attached to him. In other words, I'd be willing to trade him or get another tight end on the team that you could use for certain matchups, because I think Kelce is just not going to give you the consistency you like. And part of that is because Noah Gray is also on this team. Another interesting situation where if you are going to have a tight end handcuff, then Noah Gray is essentially that handcuff. There were a lot of games where Noah Gray had multiple touchdowns with Kelsey on the field as well. So it's kind of a messy situation. But considering you're getting Kelsey in the 8th round, I think that is a pretty good flyer to take a chance on in that range. And then you look at this Chiefs defense. The Chiefs defense is great, but it's not a great fantasy defense. They didn't generate a lot of turnovers last season. Maybe they can this year to boost up their value a little bit. But I liked the Broncos more, but the Chiefs are on that short list of teams that I would definitely want to draft in probably top 10. Harrison Butker as a kicker is one of the more higher drafted kickers. I think, he's solid to have, but considering that he's kind of creeping into that range where you have to draft him early to probably get him, I would probably not be trying to reach for Harrison Butker personally. All right, now we will move to the Las Vegas Raiders. And Geno Smith as the quarterback. I talked about him in the quarterback video. I think this is good value to get at this range in the draft, to get Geno Smith, who is generally going undrafted, but I think there's a real possibility he is in the top 20 among quarterbacks. I think this team has a lot of offensive weapons. I see Geno Smith being pretty good for that. So if you're in a super flex league and you're looking for that second quarterback or even the third quarterback, Geno Smith is a great flyer that to me will give you a pretty consistent floor and perform better than his current projection. Aiden O'Connell, the backup again on this team. Not much to really say there other than hopefully he doesn't play, because what I will say about him is that when he was the quarterback, he did put up some good games from time to time. So I think he could be relevant in fantasy, but probably not for team success. Ashton Genty is the hot running back coming out of the draft, who is going in the mid-second round now. This is a guy that, he had an amazing season at Boise State. And coming to this Vegas Raiders team, he's going to be the RB1 because you got Raheem Mostert, Sincere McCormick, Zamir White. Not a lot of competition there. So he's going to get a lot of opportunity early on to be a elite running back on this team, and he's going high as a rookie running back accordingly. I like him, but I don't love him. And that's because, he does get a lot of opportunity here. But at the same time, I think the overall team it's just not this was not a great running team last season. And, maybe with Pete Carroll and company, they can incorporate a better offensive line system to get the running backs in space more. And I think Genty will be, I think you're looking at a guy that could be a top 12 running back, or at least on the fringe of that. But this is, again, a situation where I would like him to generally go around later to really feel comfortable with him. I like another running back in this division that I'm going to talk about in the next team a little bit more than Ashton Genty because of that, based on his relative ADP. And I think the two of them will perform about the same, personally. The backup, Raheem Mostert. So if you're looking at a handcuff, I think this is a good handcuff to have for Genty should anything happen to him, especially considering the range that you're taking him and if you're in deep leagues. So, that's something to look at because Mostert is generally very low on draft boards, but he has. You look back to his 2023 season and he was incredible. I know that's now 2 years ago, but he's proven that he can get it done when he's given the opportunities to. The wide receiver room, Jacoby Myers to me is a great wide receiver value that, again, you can get pretty late in drafts. He's going in the early 9th round generally in fantasy football drafts. And again, this is a guy that's pretty clearly the wide receiver one. He's not the receiving option number one. That's Brock Bowers. But Myers will have involvement in this offense. And I think Geno Smith is going to involve him and Brock Bowers, who I'll talk about in a little bit, quite often. So I really like Jacoby Myers. I think this is a great pick that you can get. They have 2 rookies on their team as well. Jack Besh, who they drafted in the 2nd round from TCU. And then they got Dante Thornton, who I believe they got in the 4th round. Just going to double check that. Yeah, 4th round pick from Tennessee. I think this is a good opportunity for both of these rookies, and Besh's going very late in drafts if he's drafted at all, and Thornton is generally not getting drafted. Both of these guys are good value that I would try to take a chance on personally. I think there's a good chance they could step up and be the second wide receiver on this team between the two of them. Trey Tucker is there as well, but and I've liked him as a sleeper at times, but he hasn't really proven it yet. I would be surprised if he leaps over these two rookies in terms of being a reliable fantasy receiver. But some very intriguing options here that you can get late at wide receiver. And I think, like I was, again, talking about Geno, I think this is an underrated offense, and they will be passing the ball quite often because I think in general they're going to be a losing football team. They'll be competitive, but they're going to, as a result of, the teams in their division, the AFC in general, they're going to be behind, trying to catch up, throwing the ball a lot. And I think that will create a lot of value in hidden places. Brock Bowers. So this guy was the elite tight end breakout last season. He is the tight end one in dynasty formats. And there's a real argument that he could be tight end one this year, I'd say, with Trey McBride. Personally, I like McBride a little bit more because, again, like I was talking about with Genty and Hampton, who I'll get into in the next team, generally you're going to be able to get McBride later, but I think the two of them will give you pretty similar value. One, because Bowers, you now have the two rookie wide receivers, and you also have, Genty, so they're going to have some more weapons that they could disperse the ball around a little bit more than last year. Shouldn't affect Bowers too much, but McBride, for his touchdown regression that I expect to see him get more touchdowns than he had last season with the Cardinals. I like McBride a little bit more, especially since you could get him later. But nonetheless, Bowers is an elite tight end. He's going in the mid-second. If you get him, you've locked up your tight end position for the season. There's a real argument to do that in drafts. So I love Brock Bowers. I think he's going to have a great season once again. Michael Mayer is he's intriguing as a backup should anything happen to Bowers, because Mayer was a highly drafted tight end the year before him. But unless anything happens to Brock, I don't think he's going to be in the picture at all. This defense is improved. I think they will be better than they were the year before. I don't know if I trust them for fantasy yet, but there's going to be certain matchups where they can be used as a streaming candidate. And then Daniel Carlson, he's a kicker to potentially keep an eye on, who was effective more so 2 years ago than last year, but I think we'll be in a better position to succeed with the Raiders this year. Next, we will move to the Los Angeles Chargers to close out the AFC West. Justin Herbert, I talked about in my quarterback video. You could see a little bit more on him there. I think that he gives you underrated value for this season. I think he was, despite the concerns of this offense, he was still the number 14 quarterback in 2024, and I think that role will expand even more this next season. I think he will be in the top 12 of quarterbacks this season, and I think gives you pretty good value relative to where he is going in fantasy drafts. The backup room is a little bit different. They've added Trey Lance and DJ Ukulele to compete with Taylor Heineke. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out with the three of them. One of them will not make the team for sure, and my bet is it's going to be Trey Lance. Trey Lance is not going to make the team is what I mean. But just only really something to keep an eye on should Herbert get injured. The running back situation, so I'm going to talk about Amari and Hampton. I talked about it a little bit when I was speaking on the Raiders. Hampton, to me, is much better value than Genty in terms of the position that you're drafting him. If you're going to take a flyer on a rookie, I would love to take a flyer on Hampton more so than Genty. Now, that being said, I do think Ashton Genty will have a good season, but it's at the cost of guys in his range that I think may be better value. Genty is going ahead of some guys to the degree of Christian McCaffrey, which, if you're talking dynasty, then sure, you definitely take Genty over McCaffrey. But McCaffrey still, despite the injuries last season, he's still an elite running back, and there's not a lot of competition there in San Francisco for him to compete with. That I think that McCaffrey is going to cook once the season gets going. You also have him going around the same range as A.J. Brown. I would just rather have the consistency of A.J. Brown and his target share that he's going to be getting with Jalen Hurts. Josh Jacobs, you're getting a lot of touchdowns with him. So with Genty, you're really taking a risk at that position that, yes, there could be elite upside, but you also could be costing yourself potentially better players. Hampton, though, is generally going in the 4th or 5th round. The risk with him is that you have Najee Harris there, and Najee Harris, I think, will be good enough to keep some touches away from him at times. But ultimately, I feel that Harbaugh, they've invested a first-round pick in Hampton, and I think there's a reason for that because they want this guy to be the running back one. We saw what J.K. Dobbins did last season and how this team relies on the run. And because of that, you're getting potentially what I think could be a top 10 running back on the season in Hampton in the 5th round. This is excellent value to me. I would much rather take the shot there if you're going to choose between either of these two rookies. But I think they ultimately could perform about the same. It's just the ADP value. I like Hampton more. Hassan Haskins and Kamani Vidal were on the team last season, and they will compete for the 3rd running back spot. Only really of interest in the case of injuries, though. Wide receiver. So Ladd McConkey is, again, another wide receiver that came on the scene last season. Should get a lot of volume this year he's very similar to me in the eyes of a slot possession type of receiver along the lines of Cooper Kupp. I think that he will be very effective in Puka Nacua is another one of those guys that comes to mind as well. Guys that are very good in PPR situations. That makes McConkey interesting to me. 3rd round is a little high for me for him, but I still think that this is a wide receiver one on this team in terms of the targets that he's going to be getting. Quentin Johnson, talented wide receiver, but very volatile. I think the guy that I would be looking to try to get, though, is Trey Harris, who, again, another receiver who's going undrafted or late rounds if he is drafted. And Trey Harris, rookie out of Ole Miss, is a guy that can step up as the 2nd wide receiver. And there's a real possibility that Trey Harris, as he's kind of in that mold of a guy that can be a deep threat wide receiver, X type of player, I think there's a chance he could really be a breakout this season with Justin Herbert at quarterback. I like Trey Harris as a late round guy. And Quentin Johnson, too, undrafted, I think that's a good flyer to take a chance on as well. The other receivers on this team, Darius Davis, Jalen Reagor, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, all those guys are to me, we'll see who takes the 4th receiver position, but I'm mostly just interested in those top 3 guys that I discussed earlier. The tight end room to me is a little bit murky. You have Will Disley and Tyler Conklin, 2 guys that have stayed relevant in fantasy as streaming options, but not really guys that you want to be drafting. I would take a look at Will Disley, though, in those deepest of leagues as a potential streamer. He's not going to be on draft boards, but I think there's a real chance that he can have some fantasy relevant games that puts him in the picture of guys that you want to be trying to pick up and stream for certain weeks. In the deepest of leagues, and if you should have any injuries to your tight ends, that's a name to monitor, but not necessarily in the draft process right now. This Chargers defense, again, I think will be another good defense that you can rely upon this season. Harbaugh always has good defensive units. And I think despite losing Joey Bosa, I do think that this is going to be an effective defense. Once again, may not be drafted, but they are a team that can be on waivers and can be a great streaming option from week to week. And then Cameron Dicker is one of the kickers that I think will be top 5 this season. He should be going a little bit higher in draft boards now than he has in years past. But a kicker that you might be able to get in the last round if you are drafting them and could still give you some great value. All right. Well, that's all that I've got for the AFC West. We will continue with the division previews throughout the week. We will get into the NFC East and all the NFC divisions too. And then, as I said earlier, check out this upcoming weekend. We're going to be ranking the tight ends, much like we did with the quarterbacks in this past weekend's video. So subscribe to the channel, ask any questions you got, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.